Buenas and Hafide, Todos Hamdu. This public hearing by the Committee on Federal and Foreign Affairs, Technology, Telecommunications, and Labor is hereby called to order. It is now 6:02 p.m. For the record, and in accordance with Section 8107 of Chapter 8, 5 GCA, public hearing notices were sent on Monday, June 17, 2019, adhering to the 5 working days notice, and a second public notice on Monday, June 24, 2019, 48 hours prior to today. In addition, this informational briefing was noticed on the Guam Legislature's website, which is www.guamlegislature.org. Joining me here this evening is Senator Joe San Agustin, and I'd like to thank him very much for joining me. We did go through the rules in our 2 p.m. hearing, but I'll just take a moment to reiterate. Before we proceed with the discussion of items on our public hearing agenda, I would first like to give some general rules of conduct for all those who are in attendance. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. 1, when speaking, please ensure that your microphone is on and that you're speaking into the microphone so that we can record all of the testimony given today. 2, the chair will invite individuals who have signed up to testify. 3, individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record purposes. 4, the order of questioning will begin with the panel of senators who shall complete their line of questioning for each respective item on the agenda. Upon completion of the panel's line of questioning, the chair will pose questions. 5, each member will be allowed to pose a question to an individual testifying for 1 round and will be provided another round if necessary. 6, questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room by the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Legislature. On our agenda today is Bill number 136-35 COR, sponsored by Senator Joe S. San Agustin and co-sponsored by myself, Senator Régine Biscoe, and Senators Jose Pito Terlahi, Clinton E. Rigel, Kelly Marsh Taituno, Talina Cruz Nelson, Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, Sabina Flores Paris, Therese M. Terlahi, and Amanda L. Shelton. An act to amend subsection 3105 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Title 22, Guam Code Annotated, relative to responsibly raising the minimum wage. This bill seeks to raise the minimum wage incrementally from $8.25 to $8.75 by March 1st of 2020. And then finally to $9.25 by March 1st of 2021. As the chair of this committee, I, along with my colleagues, hope to work together with our island's business leaders and the general public to fully understand the impact of this legislation on our island's economy and on our community's way of life. At this time, I'd like to invite Senator Joe San Agustin to provide opening remarks as the sponsor of Bill number 136-35. Senator?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Lee. Just Marcy for hearing this bill, the continuation of this bill. Allow me to provide a short synopsis on this bill. Our business community has received federal and local tax breaks, and it's time to pay it forward. Those earning minimum wage are not just entry-level workers. They include veterans, persons with disabilities, and manamko. They also include disproportionate number of women, single mothers, and minorities. For several weeks prior to the introduction of this bill, I put out a call for comments. I've got visits, calls, and emails from many making $8.25 or less because of the tip program that was being implemented that should not have been, and who struggled to make ends meet. They argue that the cost of living continues to rise, but their wages have not kept pace with inflation. The unfortunate reality is that many of our families live in poverty. A dollar raise over 2 years is a small step, but it may make a difference in the lives of so many. Recently, we had Dr. Rosanna Jones, an economist with the University of Guam, also presented results from a study they conducted on minimum wage. Their study reflected no negative impacts to business. In fact, their studies show that the raising of the minimum wage greatly encourage businesses to reevaluate their practices to become more competitive in their markets. This bill would allow business owners time to make necessary adjustments, so benefits may not be affected. I know there are differing opinions on both sides, so I thank you for conducting this public hearing so that our people may provide testimony on their thoughts on Bill 136. When people have more money in their paychecks each month, their increased purchasing power stimulates our local economy, and when our people prosper, our local business grow, and our island flourishes. Sidus Marcy.
Sidus Masi, Senator San Augustine. At this time, I'd like to call a panel of individuals who signed up to testify, that being Mr. Lim, please join us, and Mr. Frank Kenny from Jamaican Grill. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Lim, you may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My English is not that good. My thinking right now is up and down, left and right, front and back. Sometimes I might forget what I said and I might repeat it, but please hear me out. I'm here to support the minimum wage, and I'm here to not support the minimum wage. Let's say the support side first. Once you raise the minimum wage, there will be more money to those under present minimum wage. They will have more money to buy goods. And to the government, they have more tax for collecting. And I'm not supporting the minimum wage is once they receive more money, then the welfare program, the food stamp program, and other programs have the brackets. Once they reach that bracket, then they will call in sick, their wife have appointment, the kid have appointment, the car have problem, in order to meet not over that bracket. And my coworker last week asked me, I need to take a week off. I got a $6,000 some tax refund. And my input is, they come in to work, they try to deal with the bracket, not to over that bracket. I'm sorry, I cannot work overtime. I cannot force him to work overtime. And yet, the way I understand is, we are legally not to work. If I'm not working, the policeman won't take me to, they won't arrest me. And the government won't kick me out of United States of America. And if I'm hungry, I can go to certain agency to get free food. I can go apply food stamp. I can go apply welfare. I can apply Gura. And for my lady coworker, previous coworker, she can get WIC programs. So are those programs accounting for or affected of the minimum wage? If you said right now it's the $8.25, but after my coworker received $6,000 some tax refund, earned child credit, so all those programs, I believe they earn more than the minimum wage now. Yet, our money came from hotel industrial, from the federal grant. Let me suggest my way. Instead of working 40 hours a week, 80 hours per 2 weeks, why don't let them only work 4 hours a day so they have less working hour and get more pay? I'm not talking about minimum wage. Maybe pay them more. As long as they are happy, then they will consume more. So the government of Guam will receive more tax on the payroll tax. But once the supermarket, the gas station, or any business receive their money from their buying, so the business will get more GRT. So that's the way I'm thinking of the good size and the best size. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Lim. Mr. Kenny?
Okay, good afternoon, good evening there, Senator Lee and Senator St. Augustine. Thank you so much for having the 6 o'clock p.m. version of the testimony. I'm going to go a little bit just kind of off the cuff and just commenting on being a restaurateur here on Guam for the past 25 years. First and foremost, we always like to recommend and acknowledge our customer base, the community of Guam that drives and thrives our business. And in opening up our doors in December of 1994, the minimum wage back then was $4.25 an hour. So being in business for the length of time that we've been in, we are well versed and used to periodic minimum wage increases, right, over the course of time. A lot of the same reasoning and rationale really on both sides of the equation, if we keep it simple, heads and tails, right? A lot of those rationales and reasonings continuously are consistent as well, right? They might be brought up to a contemporary understanding, but for the most part, the arguments have always been the same. So with that being said, I have no problem, generally speaking, as far as minimum wage increase, right? I think the idea on the table of 2 increments of 50 cents and 50 cents, I think that is manageable. But I would like to comment that, for the record and moving forward, that if the government mandates continued minimum wage increases within short time periods, I believe it puts small business such as Jamaican Grill maybe not at risk, but possibly within question. And the reason why I say that is we earn our living from modest means of the restaurant business in which profit margins are small in nature. With that being said, we can only raise prices up, and for the record, every time there has been a minimum wage increase, we've raised our prices. I mean, it's just a reality, it's a truth. I think most businesses would nod their heads and say yes. But here in 1919, as this continues, we're starting to be put in a situation that we've never been put in before, and that's in reference to the reasonably priced structure that we have at our restaurant. Our markup at our restaurants aren't of extravagance. They're more modest in nature so that we can try to keep prices down as much as we can to go ahead and appeal to a wide market that is represented here on Guam. So in order for Jamaican Grill to comply to new minimum wage increases, as we will, we are faced with the likelihood of raising prices, as we will, but then there may come a time down the road in the not too distant future in which we're putting our company at risk because then our product and service may not be deemed as reasonable as it once was, and thus affecting repeat business and sales coming in. So that's one point I'd like to make. Another point I'd like to make is in specific reference to the tip credits. I want to thank you, senators, and your colleagues for adding this to the bill because I think it is of significance for the restaurant industry here on Guam. I won't go into a lot of the kind of background of tip credit. I'm assuming we know some of those details. But I will say this, we at Jamaican Grill, because of the minimum wage increase of $8.25 and service charge and tips, right? Meaning restaurant workers really make their money from a compilation of sources of revenue streams. It is now on a regular basis, every payroll, biweekly basis, that we have wait staff at our restaurant that are getting paid more than our managers. So the basic principle and fundamental cause of tip credit is people that earn their wage based on the service that they go ahead and provide, their table service. So it was, if I'm not mistaken, part of the rationale was to have a lower rate so that way the service that's provided, their salaries are augmented by the tip that is put on the table by the dining patron. Because Guam does not have a tip credit, again, there's now a disparity at our restaurants in which our line employees are getting paid more than our management. And it's a little bit tough to swallow sometimes, as an employer, because ideally you want to pay management more based on the responsibilities of running shifts, making the tough calls, going out to the guests, controlling costs, etc. But I think the way it is now, and I can just speak for our humble restaurant, we are at a unequal now. So if the good senators in the passage of this Bill 136 are able to implement a tip credit at a reasonable amount, whatever that amount is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Guam Hotel Restaurant Association is proposing $7.25. So that a rate could be kind of locked in now here at the year 2019, because eventually what's going to happen is with the passage of minimum wage now, moving forward to next year, the year after, 4 or 5 years, we're going to be at the table again with the same increase. Another 3, 4, 5 years later, another increase. And if we do not, make set a tip credit amount now, right, then I think what I am sharing with you with Jamaican Grill will happen with more businesses, and it's kind of a disparity of pay per responsibility. I know in the States, and again, that's completely different, I understand. Many states, the low ball on that tip credit is $2.13, and it goes up there state by state, makes their own decision on that. So all I'm asking is that during this current round of wage increases, that the tip credit may be looked at seriously as a means of fair and equal pay for rank and file hourly employees to those salaried managers that are there assigned and detailed over them. So that concludes my brief testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny. Senator San Augustine, do you have any questions for this panel?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. In reference to Mr. Lin, in reference to when you asked about the possibility about the SNAP program, the food stamp program, stuff like that. For a family of 3, the poverty line for SNAP is $22.52 a month. Raising the minimum wage to $9.25 will not affect them even at full-time, if they're a full-time employee. But I can understand where you're coming from when some of your employees they don't want to make, overtime and so forth because they're worried about the threshold. I think they need to ask the question first with public health, what is the threshold? Because right now, as we have communicated with public health, even if they made $9.25 today, they would not be affected. And that's a family of 3. And if you were an individual, a single person earning minimum wage on SNAP might not be, they might not even be affected. So the threat is not there for them to affect it based on what we found with them. Now, I'm not too sure now how much, if you're paying them overtime, where would that threshold be? That I'm not too sure. Okay, but as far as the minimum wage, if it went up to $9.25, it would not affect them. Now, you may just have employees that don't want to work overtime anyway, so that'll be beyond me.
Senators, gentlemen, it's not they don't want to work overtime. They even below 38 hours or 35 hours. I have all kind of excuse in my cell phone. I cannot come to work. My wife have appointment today. My kid have appointment today. My car's broken, and so and so. They just take care themselves not to over those bracket. And yet, why we pay them minimum wage? Why we pay them $12? Why we pay them $15? Should we think of a way? If you work, the government will subsidize you. You get more pay. You get more.
If you don't work or work?
If you work.
If you work.
And there's no bracket at all. And why don't we think of how can we get more money into Guam? I know we get money from federal government grants. I know we have room tax from the hotel, which from the tourists. How can they sell their room? How can we get more tourists into Guam? And I know there's a lot of houses for rent. People buying houses, renovate them, and then rent it to the military. They pay GRT for the rent. And they rent it to the military. I know it's a $2,400 something. And also, I know friends, they have houses leased to Kura, thousands dollars. So how can we get more this type of customer into Guam? Once they pay, so the landlord will earn it, so they get paid GRT.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand, we were talking about the minimum wage, and now you're talking about how to bring more folks to Guam. I mean, we're only looking at $9.25, Mr. Din. We're not looking at $12 or $15. All we wanted was 50 cents. All I had to introduce was the 50 cents per year. That was all. I was not looking at no $12 or $15 an hour.
The negative effect I see is they will work less hours.
If they get paid more an hour, they'll work less hours? Why is that?
When they get more pay, so they will counter with a way to work less hours, not over the brackets.
Okay, I can understand where you come from. Now with Mr. Kenny.
Yes, sir.
With Jamaican Grill, I eat there all the time.
Thank you, sir.
I used to go to one in Tumon. I go to Dedito because I live in Chico. I have no problem eating at your place, and I always put a tip.
Thank you, sir.
And maybe you need to set it up the same way, the tip system, the way Denny's does it, where you have the waitress, then you have the cooks.
Yeah.
So they can spread the money away.
Sure, there's different.
That's something to consider. But
sure.
But this bill is only talking about raising the minimum wage, and I know that many earlier has spoken about the tips, giving credits and stuff like that. But when you mentioned $7.25, the minimum wage is $8.25. We're not looking at bringing it down now. We were looking at bringing it up by 50 cents only a year.
Okay, I'm sorry, Senator. That comment that I was making was in reference to a proposed tip credit wage.
Correct.
Yeah. So for servers, so the federal government minimum wage right now is $7.25.
That's correct.
So that's the correlation. That's all.
No, and I understand. And it was also mentioned earlier by GHRA that the last time the minimum wage was raised, they eliminated the option for the tips. And I think at that time, that's when that battle should have happened. Because today, all we're introducing is just the increase in minimum wage. But, there are some of my colleagues may consider that to add the tips. But the only ironic thing that actually throws me off is that The testimony earlier, Mr. Kenny, just to let you know,
Sure.
is that they said they'll agree to their increase, but can you add the tips to it? And they wanted to increase it, and I have a copy of their testimony. They said, increase it in 2 tiers. The bill proposes March. They asked, increase it in April, but also add the tips. Then also add the youth. And you know what really throws me off is that when before I introduced the bill, I put a notice out. And you probably read it. I'm considering this bill. I've asked, and I keep asking that on the radio. Please contact my office. Let me know. And if anybody had called me, only one group called me, and that's why I came up with the 2-tier.
Yes.
The March in 2 years.
Sure.
And if anybody would have called earlier, we would have added that to the bill. So right now, the bill is only asked to increase 50 cents a year. And because you mentioned the tips, I know that other of my colleagues are going to comment on that, and we'll see what happens. Okay? Thank you,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you, Senator, yes.
Thank you, Senator. Actually, Mr. Kenny, with regard to tip credit, we were doing some research in preparation for this bill, and it's my understanding that, like, for example, in the state of New York, depending on which county the worker is employed in, there are certain levels. So there's the cash wage, and then there's a tip credit wage. So it can go as low as $1.85 for a tip credit in certain parts of New York State. And that's as of December 31st through December 30th, 2019. 2018 to 2019. So $1.85. And then you had mentioned in your testimony that GHRA is proposing $7.25 as a tip credit wage. Is that correct?
If that is my recollection,
Okay.
yes.
And my question to you is, do you agree with a $7.25 tip credit wage as well, or were you thinking of a different amount?
Well, I think the 725 would be good. It is a federal wage right now, so it's not like we're going underneath the federal mandate. I do understand that Guam is $1 over that. It might be a little hard to swallow, but again, it coincides with the wait staff, service staff, really earning their wage. Because when the wait staff right now on Guam, when they earn a wage of $8.25, and they may have a service, that's per hour mandated by law, and we're in compliance with that. Mm-hmm. And then if there is a service charge addition to that, that's another increase. And then if there's the tip, and of course you can't touch the tip, right? So all that tip goes. So so service staff on Guam at some of your busier restaurants, are getting paid $18, $19, $20 per hour. And the managers, this is my point of contention, the managers that, manage them are a little bit like, hey, maybe I'll just go back to being a wait staff instead of having the stress of running the shifts and dealing with the boss per se. So it's just a little inequity. That's the reason why I bring it up primarily. Thank
you very much, gentlemen. We really appreciate your testimony this evening. Senator, do you have any additional questions? Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony on this bill? Hearing none, I just wanted to note that the committee will continue to receive testimony, and written testimonies may be submitted through email at Senator Biscoe Lee at guamlegislature.org, or they may be hand-delivered to the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalan Santo Papa here in Hagåtña until the close of business on Friday, July 12th. And we will go ahead and adjourn this hearing. We thank you again so much for your time and providing testimony on this bill. This public hearing is now adjourned. It is 6:35 p.m. Sidus Masi. Thank you.